She thought he was about to drag her into the barn and finish what the others had started. Lottie Mae Hart was 19, barefoot in the dry yellow grass behind a weathered barn at the edge of Dodge City, Kansas. She was still as a fence post, eyes steady, ready to fight with that broken rail if she had to. Eli Mercer was 48, broad-shouldered with a gray beard. He stepped toward her slowly, his hat throwing shade over eyes she could not read. The summer sun burned straight down, hot enough to dry old stains into the wood beside her. "Get out. Leave me alone," she cried, her voice breaking like a splintered rail. She clutched a broken fence post to her chest as if it were a rifle, though it was only cracked pine, light and useless against a grown man. From where she sat, all she could see was a rancher, dusty from the Santa Fe Trail, kneeling a few feet away as if closing the distance meant claiming something. Santa Fe Trail dust still clung to his boots. That trail built men, and it buried plenty of them too. There were bruises around Lottie's wrists, faint but fresh. There was a tear at the collar of her dress. There was a small leather ledger half hidden beneath her arm, its corner darkened with sweat and dirt. She held it like it was worth more than money, like it was the only thing keeping her alive. Eli saw all of it. "I ain't here to hurt you," he said quietly, though she flinched at the sound of any male voice. She had been told ranchers were the same as the rest. Take what they want, burn what they can't sell, and bury what talks. And when she looked at Eli Mercer, big hands rough as saddle leather, she saw not a savior, but the last mistake she might ever make. A shape moved in the distance beyond the barn. This was Dodge City, where men like Wyatt Earp once tried to keep order. And sometimes order still came late. Another rider watched from a distance, waiting. Eli did not turn toward the rider. He kept his eyes on the girl, because he saw something there that did not fit the story he had been given. She was not a thief. She was terrified. And whatever she was running from, it already had a badge and a friend in town. The rider came closer, slow and easy, like he owned the dust he was kicking up. He studied Eli Mercer first, then he studied the girl, and he kept his hand near his belt like the gesture alone could keep order in Kansas. Eli didn't move. He kept his hands open where Lottie could see them. Lottie held the broken post tighter, her knuckles pale, her eyes fixed on Eli like he was the only danger that mattered. That was the cruel part. The real threat wasn't even the one she could see. The badge man was Jed Kearns, and he didn't look as sure as he tried to. A second rider slid in behind him, clean vest, calm smile, and a gaze that never warmed up. He tipped his hat at Jed, like they'd shared jokes before. Then he looked down at Lottie like she was a stray dog that had wandered into the wrong yard. Rafe said she'd stolen from honest men, and he said Eli had been creeping around barns for a reason. Jed nodded like a man who wanted this to be simple. He also looked like a man who needed Rafe to stay quiet about something. He told Eli to stand up slow, and he told him he'd come to the sheriff and clear it up. Eli rose carefully, because one wrong twitch would turn Dodge City into a graveyard story. Lottie tried to speak, but her throat locked, and her fingers slid over that hidden corner of leather like it was a prayer. Jed noticed that movement, and his eyes narrowed a fraction. Like he'd seen ledgers ruin men before, a ledger could ruin a sheriff, and it could ruin a deputy even faster. Rafe stepped closer, smiling, and Lottie jerked back so hard her shoulder hit the barn wall. Eli shifted his body between them, not touching her, just blocking the line. That earned him a hard look from Jed, and a soft laugh from Rafe. It wasn't a funny laugh. It was the kind that told you the punchline was going to hurt. Jed decided the quickest way to calm things down was to move everyone where Rafe wanted them. He pointed toward town. He said the sheriff would sort truth from trouble. Lottie heard that, and her face went flat with dread because she knew the sheriff's door didn't open both ways. And when Rafe's eyes flicked to her sleeve like he already knew about that ledger, Eli understood the ugly truth. This town wasn't asking who was guilty. It was deciding who would be blamed. Jed walked them back into Dodge City under a sky that felt too wide for the truth it was hiding. Dust rolled along Front Street, wagons creaked past, and a couple of old men outside the Long Branch saloon looked up just long enough to decide this wasn't their problem. Long Branch had heard every lie in Kansas, and it kept serving whiskey anyway. Lottie was taken to the small holding room behind the sheriff's office, a narrow space that smelled of old wood and stale sweat. Jed told her it was for her protection. She didn't argue, but the way she looked at him said she knew protection and prison sometimes shared the same door. Eli stood in the center of the office while Sheriff Dunham leaned back in his chair like a man bored with the whole world. Rafe did most of the talking. He said cattle had gone missing along the Cimarron stretch. He said a ledger had disappeared from a respectable businessman. He said the rancher from Texas showed up at the same time as the trouble. Respectable? That word hung in the air like cigar smoke. Jed shifted his weight, eyes flicking once toward the back room where Lottie sat alone. Rafe caught that look and gave him the smallest nod. Later, outside near the water trough, Rafe stepped in close enough for only Jed to hear. He reminded him about the debt from a winter card game. He said a clean slate was waiting. If Jed kept things simple, silence can sign more deals than ink. Inside, Eli watched all of it. He had seen that kind of quiet before. Years ago in Texas, riding with his brother and a man they trusted, that man sold them out for a few dollars. During a rustling run gone bad on the Chisholm Trail, Eli's brother was shot in the back, and Eli never forgot what cowardice cost. He wasn't about to let it cost this girl her life. That night, long after the oil lamps burned low, Jed unlocked the back door to the office. He told himself he was just moving evidence. He told himself he was keeping order. Jed had not sent for any marshal. Not yet, because he was still trying to save his badge. But when he stepped into the holding room, Lottie looked up at him and asked one simple thing. Is he going to kill me? If you want more stories like this, hit like and subscribe, and tell me what time it is where you're listening. Because in the next few minutes, Jed is going to aim that gun at the wrong man, or the right one. Jed stood in that doorway longer than a good man should have to. The lantern behind him threw his shadow across the holding room wall, long and crooked, like it already knew the choice he was about to make. Lottie sat on the narrow bench, shoulders squared, eyes steady, ready to swing that broken post if she had to. Fear was there, but it wasn't running the show. When she asked if Rafe was going to kill her, Jed did not answer right away, because he had heard Rafe say the words himself. Not tonight, not clean, not where anyone could ask questions. Jed told her to stand. His voice was calm, almost official, and that was what scared her most. He unlocked the door and led her out the back, not toward safety, but toward the alley that opened to the dark stretch behind the saloon. Eli had not left. He waited across the street in the shadow of a feed store, hat low, watching the back of the sheriff's office like a man who had buried family before and would not do it again. When he saw Jed guiding Lottie into the alley, something inside him settled cold. He stepped out slow, not reaching for his revolver yet. Rafe emerged from the far end, coat off, sleeves rolled, pistol already loose in his hand. He did not look surprised to see Jed there. He looked satisfied. One step to the left and he handed the girl over, one step to the right and he burned every bridge he had in this town. Rafe told him to finish it. Just a quiet shot. Blame the rancher. Say she ran. Jed remembered his pa's words. A badge ain't worth a damn if it covers a lie. Jed lifted his gun. Eli did the same. Lottie closed her eyes. They were close enough to smell dust and sweat, close enough to miss by an inch and hit the wrong soul. And in that narrow slice of Kansas night, with 3 guns raised and only one conscience left standing, Jed pulled the trigger. The gunshot cracked through the alley and echoed off the wood walls like a door slamming shut on a long lie. Rafe staggered back, his pistol spinning out of his hand and skidding across the dirt. Jed had not aimed for Eli. He had aimed for the man who thought fear was the same thing as power. For a second, nobody moved. Then Eli stepped forward, knocked Rafe flat, and kicked the fallen gun out of reach. It was not a clean fight. It was short, heavy, and honest. The kind of fight older men understand. No fancy moves, just breath, weight, and a decision not to fall. Sheriff Dunham came running, shouting about law and order, but he stopped cold when he saw Jed's gun still raised and pointed not at Eli, but at Rafe. Jed's voice was steady now. He said there was a ledger. He said Fort Dodge would hear about it tonight. No more lies. Then he yelled for the night watchman to ride hard for Fort Dodge. Fort Dodge was close enough for hard riders, and the marshal was already watching cattle trouble. By sunrise, a United States Marshal rode in from Fort Dodge, dust on his coat and patience worn thin. The ledger was opened on the sheriff's desk. Lottie stepped forward and pointed to the page with her own finger. She did not shake this time. Names were read out loud. Money amounts followed. The room got very quiet. Rafe was taken away in irons. Sheriff Dunham grumbled about old favors and hard times. He drew his gun halfway, like he might gamble on fear one last time. But the marshal's stare and Eli's steady stare made him think twice. The badge came off, and Jed Kearns, young and foolish and not as clean as he wished he had been, removed his own badge and laid it down beside the other. He did not beg to keep it. He just said he would earn it back somewhere else. Lottie stood on the boardwalk later that afternoon, wearing a borrowed pair of boots Eli had brought from his saddlebag. She did not look like a girl cornered against a barn anymore. She looked like someone who had survived being wrong about a man. Eli did not speak of heroics. He simply told her that sometimes the hardest thing a person can do is trust again. Out here, before 1900, justice was not always fast, it was not always pretty, but it still belonged to the ones willing to stand their ground when stepping aside would have been easier. So here's the question that lingers. When the moment comes and it costs you something real, do you protect your comfort or do you protect what is right? If this story hit home, hit like and subscribe. Now tell me this, if you were Jed, would you protect your badge or protect what is right, like a real man would? And have you ever been judged wrong, the way Eli was behind that barn? And as you finish listening, wherever you are tonight, remember this. A man is not defined by the mistake he almost made. He is defined by the line he refuses to cross and the brothers he stands by.